Adam 12.
Adam 12.
Cop Talk America's on the air.
Copy. Put me 10-6. I'm tuning into Cop Talk America.
Welcome to Cop Talk America, where police discuss the job, answer questions, and respond to law enforcement hot topics around our great nation. With over 100 years combined law enforcement experience, here's your host.
Welcome back to another episode of Cop Talk America. I'm Chad. Joined today, I got Dave, Jarvis, Jerome. Which one do you want to go by today? Jerome or Jarvis?
Don't matter.
Don't care. And we got Jeff. First one we're going to talk about today is, you know what, after starting doing these podcasts, after I was asked to do these, I hate looking at the news anymore because I turned the news off for a long time. And now you're making me read these articles and do these things that just make you angry anyway. So the first article we're talking about today, we got U.S. Representative Bobby Rush at a press conference calls the FOP, the Fraternal Order of Police, the sworn enemy of black people. And he says it twice. We're going to start off the episode today. We'll show you this. You can join us on our YouTube and watch the video, which we will play for you now.
Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx has taken a lot of heat since her office dropped charges against Jussie Smollett. Today, a public show of support for Foxx at Rainbow Push. CBS 2's Lauren Victory reports Foxx's supporters accused the police union of racism and embracing white nationalism.
The FOP is a sworn enemy of black people. The sworn enemy.
Fiery allegations in the already controversial saga ignited by actor Jussie Smollett 9.5 weeks ago. Today, Congressman Bobby Rush
Keep Kim Foxx
was among supporters of Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx. She's under fire after her office recently dropped all charges against Smollett. Investigators are adamant the actor lied about being the victim of a homophobic and racist attack downtown, wasting tens of thousands of dollars in police overtime. Members of the Fraternal Order of Police are demanding Foxx resign. Here's what an all-white group of officers said about the state's attorney's decision-making yesterday.
And what she's doing is she's enabling the offenders. The bad guys are not being held accountable.
And they want to keep African Americans in total disarray.
The FOP not only calls those statements inflammatory and untrue, but President Kevin Graham also told CBS 2 over the phone that Rush and others, quote unquote, should be ashamed. He's demanding an apology. Back at Rainbow Push,
I have never, will never speak ill of our partners in this work.
Foxx promised to remain professional in her relationship with men and women in blue. Then she turned to another rumor swirling, that white nationalists were among protesters calling for her to quit earlier in the week.
The notion that in a conversation about criminal justice, in a conversation that affects all of us, all communities, that the injection of white nationalists in this conversation, for me, I will tell you personally, I was afraid.
Lauren Victory, CBS 2 News.
The FOP tells us they were not aware of any white nationalists at their demonstration.
Wow, that's pretty unbelievable and surrounded by all kinds of dignitaries. Obviously, the legend of Jussie Smollett will not stop. So here we have Jussie Smollett and, of course, Kim Foxx letting him go for whatever reason, giving him a huge dose of white privilege and letting him out without any charges whatsoever, which has caused absolute outrage with everybody. And then you've got U.S. representatives chiming in here that refer to the FOP as the sworn enemy of black people because the Fraternal Order of Police actually joined in some protests outside of Kim Foxx's office calling for her resignation. And she was joined by other people. I don't know how many people ended up being at this demonstration. But, of course, then they come to say that there were white nationalists and everything else that had shown up at this protest, which so far there has been absolutely no evidence of that whatsoever. But that seems to be the narrative of the day. Get upset at somebody and just start calling them racist and white nationalists and then get out and so take all the heat off of you by just calling everybody else racist.
You know, this is nothing new, and just doing research and knowing a little bit about history, we were warned about this over 100 years ago and what we're seeing. When I think of Bobby Rush, I think of so many of the politicians today, these activists, And I want to sum this up in the words of Booker T. Washington from 1911.
Washington? How do you spell that?
Washington. Is there an R in there? It depends on where you were raised. Is it Washington or Washington?
Washington? Wash.
Was
it
you say
President
Wash,
George
I say
Washington
Wash.
or George Washington? Anyway, in the go right ahead.
Try to say something serious, and you're going to get
You
me
gotta
on my
say it seriously.
on my my pronunciation of words.
Yeah, seriously, it's Washington.
Yeah,
Washington. All right.
Will you all stop before he forgets?
Yeah,
I think you already did.
What were we talking about? It's Bobby Rush.
About Bobby Rush, how much he loves the police.
And on a serious note, for at least 30 seconds here, I'm gonna and then once again, this was wrote in 1911 by Booker T. So keep that in mind on some of these words. But he warned us. There is another class of colored people who make a business of keeping the troubles, the wrongs, and the hardships of the Negro race before the public. Having learned that they are able to make a living out of their troubles, they have grown into settled habit of advertising their wrongs, partly because they want sympathy and partly because it pays. Some of these people do not want the Negro to lose his grievances because they do not want to lose their jobs. I can't think of a better way to describe so many of the problems that we're dealing with in law enforcement when it comes to race issues, and so much of the crap that you hear out of guys like this Bobby Rush and so many other ones. And this isn't a new idea. This isn't a new concept. It's over 100 years ago that we have somebody that is respected in our history that saw this type of thing coming and could see where the abuse is going to come from. And it has certainly come to fruition. There's no doubt about that.
But how somebody performs a racial hoax that turns into all these representatives now slamming the police department. I mean, it's just, how can you make that turn? How can you make, they did a great case, you got this total hoax, and now it has somehow got turned into a bunch of racist police?
Well, because we can do the nothing to see here. Because when she dropped the charges, then it's automatically assumed, well, then there was no case. So the police did something wrong. That's the only reason they would drop the case. And then all the people that are standing here with this congressman, they all make their money based on, I got to keep the population against one another. I mean, and that's what basically is going on in this country. We have to keep the division for one reason only, money. I make my money doing this. This is how things get done as quickly as we can.
What the heck? Get a hold of yourself.
I have friends.
Everybody you know is right here at the table.
I'm sorry, I have friends. I'll tell them to call back later.
Doubtful.
That was my mom.
But so we
Chad,
have
are you
these
doing
people,
that podcast again?
We have these people who are standing here with her, and then they sit there and they talk about whether it was a white nationalist or there were white nationalists that showed up. You have all this press that was there. None of them happened to capture these people on film, so you could sit here and say they're right here. And then you have this congressman sitting here saying, well, the FOP has stated publicly that they have no problem with black people being shot on the street by a police officer. And I'm like, just the mere fact that a politician, and I realize politicians are held to a lower standard than everybody else, they can say anything they want. They never get asked to back up what they're saying. And if they do lie or say something, there'll still be people who sit here and say, yeah, but he's supporting me. And I'm like, how is he supporting you? What is he doing for you? And when you start to ask people serious questions, and then they sit there and the party of diversity and the party that wants to have all this inclusion is the party that's sitting here telling everybody, as long as you do exactly what we say. If you don't, well, then we have to riot against you and we have to call you names and we have to do these other things. You don't see the FOP calling any names or making any statements about this guy or insulting his integrity, should he have any. The chief of police was very clear when he came out and made his statements. Now, is he a racist? Because they'll just say, and I hate to even use this word, but, they'll Uncle Tom him. Well, he's just doing it because the man's got him by the what, and they're making him say what they want him to say in order to keep his job and do all the rest of this stuff. There's just no integrity left with the opposition when they make these kind of claims. It's actually kind of a shame we even talk about them because it shouldn't come to that level where we give them any credence. But if you ignore it, it gets worse. And this country is getting worse because of all this things that are being said, and no one has to back up anything they say. I'll be happy to back up what I'm talking about.
And why anymore do you just have to take sides based on race?
It's the platform of the left or the Democratic Party. It has been for years. It initially, I think, was very definitely worthwhile. In back, you go 50, 60 years ago. It's a very noble cause, but it was also a very successful cause to empower the Democratic Party. And there was a lot of changes in this country that needed to be made, and they've been made. And I honestly don't think probably most people, if you were to go back to the 1950s and 60s, you know, the real civil rights leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King and those folks, I don't think any of them probably ever dreamed that within a generation that most institutional racism, or all institutional racism, most racism in general, other than individuals, is going to be eliminated from this country. We're not going to have restaurants that says white only. We're not going to have movie theaters that says colored entrance in the back or anything like that. It was eliminated practically overnight.
Well, someday if we ever get a black president, it'll be completely eliminated, right?
That'll happen one of these days.
Yeah, someday.
And now we fast forward to today, and there is a huge industry that is their platform when it comes to this side of the political aisle. It's the big part of their platform. It's a big part of their talking points. And when you really don't have any major problem when it comes to race, in my opinion, in this country right now, let's try to create one. And we've created one, all right. You have a major problem in the inner city, whether through entitlements and welfare and some of the political policies that we've had in the last few decades has caused just an infested area of crime and a lot of problems. And unfortunately, a lot of those people that are getting arrested and going to prison and are getting into fights with the police are black. They don't address the fact that, well, this guy's in prison because he robbed a place. This guy got shot by the police because he had a gun. No, well, look at the disproportionate numbers because they're black. So they twist the statistics. They twist it around.
Well, the statistics aren't even close. We are the sworn enemy. I mean, it's just it is so absolutely ridiculous. I can't believe it even got media time. Well, and that's the problem. They knew it's going to cause. I mean, here we are talking about how ridiculous this is. But the left twists
this around. So they don't have the smoking gun anymore. You don't have.
How do you even twist that? How can you even say? I mean,
it's got to be the police department's
mind-boggling.
But gentlemen, as you remember now, as was stated earlier, it's the mighty green that rules everything. That's what all of this is about.
I don't even think it's the mighty
Money
green.
and power.
It's
the
I
green.
can get on
I
TV.
agree, Jarvis.
No, with these statements, I can be on TV and I can have my face nationally again. And you see
what's
Jesse
going to
Jackson right
in
there
the
standing behind
and in
him.
the end, what's going to happen? Somebody is going to pay him a set amount of money to come to their school, to come to their banquet, to come someplace to lecture, give a speech. It's all wound down to the mighty green. Nobody does anything in this country for anything other than the mighty green.
And the reason for attempting to stifle one side. So if you want to say that it's one-sided, I will agree with you. If a conservative goes to a college campus, he has to have extra security and all the rest of that stuff because the other side, which has been made by the politicians, sits here and says, we cannot allow them to speak. They're so bad. They're so demonic. We must stop their speech. So we attack them. But again, why are we doing that? Because by me having you do that, if I'm staying in the background, I make more money because you're going to buy into my rhetoric. And it's to get the people that we want into power positions in Congress and other places. If you look at the swing of the country, just in my lifetime, the things, when I grew up, your dad wore a hat, long sleeve shirt, a tie, wore a suit going to work. And he worked certain hours and he came home. There was a mom, there was a dad, there was the kids at home. You don't see that very often anymore in this country. That's not the norm. Now you have all kinds of different things. And remember, they're getting a 2 for or 3 for however many furs out of this with their alphabet soup, the LBGEIEIO thing. Because if you don't like what's going on with Smollett because, well, it's not because he's black, it was because he was gay. Now, I still don't know how you know a guy's gay when you walk up to him on the street, unless he's wearing a sign that says, hi, I'm gay. I don't get it. The whole thing, and that was facetious, but the whole thing is just silliness. Like I said before we talked about this the first go-around, the mere fact of him making this allegation in the middle of a frigid winter in Chicago where somehow he found 2 Republicans wearing MAGA hats.
Yes, but that's just it. It is so ridiculous. But now he's still being defended because people are just taking sides based on race, period.
You won't see normal people do that, white, black, or whatever they are, because they have jobs.
But how do they? But the reaction is constant on the left. Their only response is they're racist. I want to build a wall because you're racist.
Yeah, and as I said,
racist.
if it's one-sided,
but now,
yes, I agree.
It's not the hundreds of thousands of dollars they spend or whatever they spend on the whole process or the arrest investigation of Jussie Smollett and the absolute, just injustice that happened in this case whatsoever. It's just because you're racist. And at some point, you might actually have to start answering the questions.
No one will ask a question if you just claim you're racist. That will shut you down because you don't want to have to defend yourself. Instead of just looking at him and go, no, I'm not. You're an idiot. Prove to me you're not. Because when the person makes those comments, just like this congressman, when he said these things, the person talking needs to look in the mirror. If he wants to find a racist, he has one. He's with him 24 hours a day.
And like I said, to call, I think I looked up the numbers earlier today, homicides in Chicago, and out of the hundreds of them, I believe it was 3 from a year ago, whenever the last numbers came in within the last few days, anyway, it's 314 young black males have been killed, murdered in the city of Chicago. So what percentage do you think of that were killed by other young black males? Probably 90+%.
Oh, the vast majority, no doubt.
Yeah.
The rest were killed by police officers.
But we are the sworn enemies. And I didn't see a police shooting since like February.
That was when the 300 and something were killed.
Yeah. Well, they'll have you believe that. So,
yeah. Thanks, Jerome.
But the message and the problem is because now this is probably going through colleges. I mean, we got this other story out of Massachusetts about the kids protesting just police presence on campus. But I mean, this just fuels these kids that have no idea. They've got no life experience. But they read these stories, and this is how they become this insane, which we'll talk about later. Anyway, they get all these ideas, and they hear this shit, and they believe it, and that's all they're taught. That's all they hear. Police are bad, and now you have a U.S. representative saying we are the sworn enemy of black. I mean, this is horrible. This is absolutely, and you can get away with it.
Yes, you can, because remember, he's one of the few. You have few that runs the many, and this is what he's using. He knows that if he comes out and he says his part right now, and he gets his part going, then you're going to have a few more that's going to fall in and follow him, because right now to go against the police is the thing to do.
But why is it? But it's not okay. Why is it? Could a white representative come out and say black people are the enemy of the police? What would happen?
Depends on what his position was.
No, I don't care. It doesn't matter what the position was.
Yes,
you would take that one statement, even if it was a
neighborhood.
whole paragraph that he said, they're going to take that one thing out and you're gone.
No,
everybody's going to condemn it. You're going to come out.
Depending on where he's at right now, if he's one of the ones that's on the bandwagon about all the police officers do is go around and shoot unarmed black men, yes, he could come out and say that, and he'd be in the same spot that Ross is in right now.
See, I'll give you what I consider a better example, though. The former president of the United States, Barack Obama, comes out and sits there and says,
there was a black president. I forgot about that.
The party needs to stop being so ignorant, stop being so polarizing, because they're forming a circular firing squad, and they're just going to destroy themselves. The problem with that is, as I said last week, while the Republicans are sitting back and saying, well, this is good, it's going to work out for us, it's bad for the country. It's bad that we're having these conversations. It's bad that we're having these kids that are in an impressionable age in high school and colleges, and this is what they're being subjected to and told this is the way to think. How do you stop that? Okay, you might win the election. You might win the next couple of elections. Those kids are still being raised to think a certain way now that will be with them for years to come. When I think back to who I was when I was 20 versus who I am now, like I said again last week, I used to be a Democrat. The party left me. I didn't leave it. It's getting to be really a shame what's going on in this country. But I think the vast majority of the people here in the Midwest, they don't buy into any of this crap.
I agree with Jarvis. So it's about money. It's about power.
Yep.
And I'm going back. This is nothing new. I finally found the quote here. It took me a while to find it. But when
I hope his last name's not Washington.
Another quote. This one's from Lyndon Johnson. I'd heard it before. I just want to make sure I didn't misquote it. But when they signed the Civil Rights Bill, he said, "We've won the black vote for a generation." I don't think he used the word black, though. It's the platform. It's the platform that the Democratic Party uses, and whether it looks ridiculous to anybody on the outside looking or not, they don't deviate from the platform. And right now, since we don't have, as I was saying earlier, we don't have these examples of racism in our society like we used to have 50 or 60 years ago, they've got to create that. They've got to create this illusion that we have crazed Ku Klux Klan police officers running around executing black people for no reason. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Right, wrong, or indifferent. They have got to try to create that illusion, and the media is right on their side with it, because the media's got the same ideology of the left. They're all the same think tank. No one disagrees with anybody. They're all out of academia. They're out of the colleges, as we've already talked, how they're polluting young people's minds, and they're all thinking the same way. The politicians, the media, the left-wing propaganda, the professors, and then all of a sudden you have somebody that disagrees with them and says, well, I kind of like Donald Trump or something, and they flip their wig. And they can't handle anybody that doesn't agree with them. It's all on the same, they all think the same way. And even if it's clearly wrong, even if it clearly makes no sense, no logical sense, it doesn't matter. They're going to stick to the platform. They're going to stick to the narrative. They're not going to change their talking points.
And something you said before we got on the air, there's almost a thing now of being a victim. You want to be the victim. You want to be able to claim why you have all these problems and someone else should come take care of this. And I'm like, okay, I don't know why we're having these issues. I mean, is it because parents won't let their kids go out and make a mistake? When I was at work today, I'm sitting here.
Partially true.
Yeah. And when I was working today and I'm driving by and I see this woman getting on her bike, she's in her probably early 20s, and she's wearing more gear than I would own to do a SWAT raid. And she's getting on a bicycle to ride. And I'm like, oh, for the love of God, where are you going? This is straight, flat ground. And she's riding along. And I'm like, we have become afraid of a bicycle.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
And I think we also need to put our perspective out there too. Is kind of the point of the show is what things like this do to us, to the police officers working the street. I mean, people don't realize how bad it is out there. It's like we've never seen before. You see article after article of departments cannot hire at all. I mean, they're leaving everywhere in droves. The department I work for, we're so far behind, and we cannot get applicants. And it's a very well-paying job. It pays better than most jobs of kids coming out of college. And I don't know, I call it the Obama effect. I mean, everything has been so bad since, once the U.S. administration turned on police officers, and made us the enemy of everything, every shooting, put this in the spotlight right now. I mean, the amount of disrespect, and disrespect's even the low end of it, the violence, the deaths, the murders. What this does to affect us when you have more of this rhetoric going on TV, calling us, the enemy of the blacks. We get officers killed over this stuff. There is no respect anymore. There's a reason. We get kids all the time. They're on this for a couple months. They'll do the FTO program. They're like, I can't do this shit for 30 years, and I can't blame them. And they're turning around and leaving. And people have to understand this is the tip of the iceberg right now. I mean, I personally feel within 10 years, 15 years, you're going to see a whole new gamut of policing out there, if there is any at all whatsoever. I mean, I guess you can just take the city of Chicago alone, seeing what happens when the police stop policing. And that's going to happen all over. And when we can't even staff to do, and it's things like this that are damaging us. And most of the country,
but that gets into a larger conversation.
Oh, it's a huge conversation. But
you got why police administrations do the way they do. Why do city administrations react the way they react? Why do the state administrations? And the lone officer who's out there thinking, when you first start the job, you think they got my back. These kids now, I mean, and just in talking to them, going out training with them and stuff, I cannot believe how many of them just sit. That's the first thing that goes through their head is there's nobody on my side because this is what dominates the news media.
When I go on the next call and there's a 14-year-old kid sitting up there and now he's just thinking that I am his sworn enemy.
Yep.
Going on this call, I mean, that's dangerous. And what does that do for anybody, for crying out loud?
And that's why I said when you got these kids going to these college campuses and they're getting told this rhetoric as if it's fact, and they're growing up, and these are the people who are supposed to be the mixed middle class, which runs the country, and they're thinking, well, the police are the bad guys. And I'm like, no.
Have you seen a lot of college kids lately? It's trying to run they can't run a one-car funeral to the cemetery. It's scary where we're going to be in 20 or 30 years.
But again, and that's why I said it's a larger question, because then we go back into parenting and, we watch our kids and they don't get to make mistakes. We will stop them before they do it. And I'm like, yeah, no, you don't learn nothing without getting a scar, mark, or a tattoo somewhere on you.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems, especially when you talk about the country in general, and it just seems so divided, is this generation is probably about the first generation that really hasn't had a major threat to their very existence as Americans. When most of us were growing up, the Cold War was in full force. You never knew where the Russians were going to blow you up. Before that, you had World War II and the Nazis. Before that, you had World War I, and you go right on back. And there was always this threat. If you didn't stay, you might not agree with everything in politics. You might not like everything the government does. But at the end of the day, you had to be an American because, we had force, or we had strength in numbers. And in the last 20 years or so, we've had the terrorist problems. But the reality of it is, flying planes into buildings really isn't a good invasion plan if you want to take a country over. It really screws with people's heads, but you're not going to overthrow a country because of it. And these kids nowadays, they've never really had that threat hanging over their heads that somebody else could come in here and take this away from you. And I think they've been spoiled, and they've turned into a bunch of brats.
There's a lot to be said to that, because, I mean, they're saying also when everything's going really well, you have to find little ticky-tacky shits to be upset about.
Oh, yeah, first world problems.
So that's it. That's how well everything is going in this country right now, is that you have to pick out this little ticky-tacky bullshit to protest and complain about because you got nothing else to bitch about.
Right, so bringing it back to this Representative Rush is exactly just that. I mean, he just makes statements, and they're bold-faced lies. No one calls him on it. Nobody in the press walked up and said, back up what you just said.
Yeah.
What are you talking?
Give us examples.
Give me an example where the police department came out or the union came out in a shooting and said, no, it's okay for you to shoot black people in the city of New York or city of Chicago. Okay. When did they make that comment? Because that's what he said they said. So when he's going to say, well, they didn't actually. No. If you're going to make a comment, back it up. If you're just going to run your mouth, then don't even put him on TV, because you're just running your mouth.
Well, now you go to that part of invading his rights, because remember, we all have the right to say whatever it is.
I got no problem with that. Don't put him on TV.
Oh, we can say whatever we want anymore, because nobody is going to ask us to prove what we said. Not anymore. Wow. Because, I mean, everybody has every right to say and do whatever. That's how come we have all these folks that's running around claiming to be this or claiming to be that, and everybody is accepting it anymore.
Is that alphabet soup thing I was talking about?
Yeah, that's what you were talking about earlier.
I think you're right, Jarvis, as long as you got an opinion that agrees with this type of mindset. I think if you got an opinion that doesn't agree with this more liberal mindset, then you do have to justify about every word out of your mouth.
But, no, we just... Yeah, he has the right to feel that way, or he has the right to say that, or if that's what they want to be, then we shouldn't say they can't be that. We have to give them the right to be that. I mean, come on, folks. It's getting ridiculous with every time you turn around, there's a new group popping up that, I want to be this today. No, you were born a male, whether you be white, black, whatever. That's what you were born, a male. And it's time to just look at this person and tell them, that's what you are. You're a male. You're a female. Nothing else. You're just that. I'm sorry.
And how angry does the Chicago Police Department have to be? I mean, after all this, doing this wonderful investigation, watching their case just get thrown out of court and then get turned around and just get called a bunch of racists.
Yeah.
They should be awful mad.
On the most unbelievably obscene case.
And I'd like to know what percentage of the Chicago FOP, I know it'd be a considerable percentage, starting with their chief, of course the chief's probably not a member of the FOP, I guess, that are black. I mean, this guy's not even rational in what he's talking about. He's not like he's talking about, some 4-man department in Squirrel Tail, Arizona or something. This is a Chicago Police Department.
So that'll do it for this episode of Cop Talk America. You can also follow us on the Twitter and check out, we're on Facebook, and check out our YouTube channel. Thank you for joining.